sympathetic stuff. We're not going to deal with any of this talking about pathways going to those organs. Because again, I have both, right? That dual innervation thing. We're going to focus only on this one and not do this one over here. Okay, so first thing is I have to figure out is how many neurons in my pathway to an organ. So if I'm going to my heart, how many neurons from my spinal cord to the heart? Always got to have 2. That's the key, got to have 2. Okay, so there's neuron number 1, and there's neuron number 2. I don't care if it's like to your heart, to your liver, to your spleen, to your uterus, whatever it is, you got to have 2, okay? Got to have 2. What do we call them? Pre and post, right? That's our thing, because where they synapse right there, that little thing is a ganglia. And so neuron number 1 over here is before the ganglia, so it's pre. Neuron number 2 is after the ganglia, so it's post. So we call this one pre-ganglionic and this one post-ganglionic. Does that make sense too? We're trying to just go like nice and slow, make sure we don't miss anything in here. So you should know pre-ganglionic. These are my motor neurons now, right? So pre-ganglionic motor neurons. Are they myelinated or unmyelinated? Myelinated, right? They're always myelinated. So my pre-ganglionic, always myelinated. So over down here, yep, they have myelin. What are my post-ganglionic ones? They're non or unmyelinated or non-myelinated. So we'll say non-myelinated for those. Okay, that looks pretty good. Are we okay with that? So far so good? Didn't lose anybody? All right, so the ganglia. So, what types of these ganglia do we have, right? These are called, they're ganglia. The big classification is autonomic ganglia, right? Because it's part of the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, right? So they're my autonomic ganglia, of which they come in 2 types for my autonomic ones, right? For my sympathetic, I should say. I have one set that run right alongside my spinal cord. And they go all the way down to the very bottom. And they sort of loop around and come all the way back up to the other side. Those ganglia are called my sympathetic, because it's part of my sympathetic nervous system. Chain, because it's like a giant chain necklace, ganglia. So they're called my sympathetic chain ganglia, because they go on either side of the cord. I also have 3 that hang out on the front side of my cord. 1, 2, 3. What do we call those? Those are my collateral ganglia, or my prevertebral ganglia, and actually have names to them. So we'll say those 3 over here. So we can call them prevertebral, because they're in front of my vertebra, aka collateral ganglia. And there's 3 of them, and their names are celiac, my first one, superior mesenteric, and then I have the inferior mesenteric for that one. So they're just in that order too. So my first one's the celiac, next one's the superior mesenteric, third one's the inferior mesenteric. And we said yesterday, like, if I were to, again, synapse, right, in a ganglia, depending on like which one I synapsed in would sort of determine where I was headed in the body, right, that sort of thing. So I said if I did my celiac ganglia, I would go to my tummy, right, so to the stomach, over here. If I did my superior mesenteric, I would probably be heading to my, like, small intestines. And if I did my inferior, I pick up large intestines, bladder, sex organs, all those things on this side. Now, how's that looking for you from yesterday? Does that sound pretty okay? Maybe some kind of? What else can we throw in there? we need a little different picture now with this whole thing. So we sort of found pre and post ganglionic. We talked about the two neurons, right? Myelinated, unmyelinated. We talked about my sympathetic chain. What if I synapse over here in my sympathetic chain? Where am I heading to? This all does my abdominal pelvic stuff, right? This is like abdomen. This might help you too. So like abdomen and pelvic area. So, right, liver, pancreas, gallbladder, spleen, small intestines, large intestines, uterus, bladder. What about up here then, for my sympathetic chain? Thoracic, right? It has to be up top. So this is all my thoracic cavity things. So heart, lungs, those items up top. Okay. So if we're good with that, we go back and just do one more thing here for you. Okay, now all we did was this. I said, okay, well great, I know I go from here to there. If I cut through my spinal cord, like right there, just chop it right through that little neuron, just like that, and then look at it, right, like a top view sort of thing, like look it this way, here's how it's going to look. And here's where I got like a little crazy. Can I get rid of this stuff over here maybe? Can I get rid of this stuff maybe? Okay, we'll get rid of that over here. We'll draw that crazy picture for you again. Everybody loves. Okay, so we'll try to draw a little smaller scale. So here's my spinal cord. And just like that there. And we have that little thing like this. All right. So the first thing I want you to know is this. If I divide my cord in half, like from just like that, I would like you to know that the back side, the posterior side of my cord, deals with all of my sensory information. So all my sensory. The front side does all my motor information. So there's definitely a question there for you on that stuff. So sensory in the back, motor in the front. That looks pretty good. And then those horns, those gray horns we have to like learn about. On the back was my posterior gray horn. We learned that in lab. The front side was my anterior gray horn. We saw that one too. And off to the side here was my lateral gray horn. Perfect. That sort of went back to, like way back when we did this other crazy picture here. We said all of my sensory information goes into the cord and goes up like this, of which I call that my sensory afferent. Does that ring a little bit of a bell, maybe? So sensory afferent. You did that like same thing, S-A-M-E, so sensory afferent, motor efferent. Then motor commands would be generated from here. It would go down and out to my motor. That's my efferent. On that side, over there. And the same thing, I have my ascending tracts. That's my white matter now, my ascending tracts over here. And I have my descending tracts over there. So try to tie that chapter 14 in here too. So afferent, efferent, looking pretty good. Remember, I have over here for my sensory, it only comes from two spots. My sensory stuff, I have somatic sensory, and I had visceral sensory. Those are my two things I can take from. Motor command, same thing. I have somatic motor, and I have visceral motor. Okay, so what's my somatic motor commands control? Only one thing, skeletal muscle, right? So that's only skeletal muscle. And visceral does everything else. So it does cardiac muscle, it does smooth muscle, it does all my glands, that sort of thing. What about on the sensory side? Somatic does skeletal muscle again, right? So about body position, joints, all that good stuff. And also it picks up all my special senses for me. Visceral, same thing, right? Sensory from my heart and my lung and my spleen and my uterus and all the other good stuff over here too, right? That's all of my sensory from same stuff. Go down like cardiac, and smooth, and glands over here. All that internal visceral stuff. So it works exactly the same way. So sensory in, motor out sort of thing. So here's my same thing on the spinal cord, sensory in, motor out. So let me just draw, I can get rid of this real quick and sort of redraw that for you. Just add a few more things in here. Okay, so we said that we had, should have that like in your notes from like way back when. If we were to draw this thing to like real size and real life stuff, how it works out here, the back side looks sort of like this coming up here, this one. Front side was like this, those sort of come together. This comes like this and does that little crazy thing here. That does that crazy thing here. That comes here, that goes there. And so we got to label these things. And we said, yeah, on the back side, that was my dorsal root. So we learned that up in lab 2, so dorsal root. This is my dorsal root ganglia. I'm just going to abbreviate that as DRG. This is my ventral root over here, coming out. This is my dorsal ramus. That's the one we do for you yesterday too, so dorsal ramus. This is my ventral ramus. And because I have 2 pathways here, it's still a ramus, but I have 2 of them, so it's the plural, rami, and we called it communicantes. Okay. So here's what I want you to know about this stuff, I guess. Where's my dorsal ramus go to? Your back. That's it. So if I'm going anywhere near my back, if I leave my spinal cord with a nerve that goes to my back, I got to go this way. I have to. So dorsal ramus goes right to my back. Doesn't matter what it is. A nerve going to some skeletal muscle, you got to go that way. A nerve going to a sweat gland, you got to go that way. A nerve going to an artery or vein, you got to go that way. That sort of thing, right? So anything on my back has to take that path. What about my ventral ramus? Where does it go to?